I want to go over a few ground rules and introductions, and then we'll get into content. First of all, I will say my name is Lux for those of you that I have not met in person yet. I look forward to one day meeting you in person, and I'm really grateful that you're all here to join us and spend time with us this afternoon, really doing some training in acro and looking at some things from the perspective of refinement and delving deeper into what makes these things work. I'm very excited to have Emily here with me. Emily and I have been working together since January, and I'm really grateful to have Emily here to help communicate some of what the flyer is participating in, some of what the base is participating in, and then just in general, a great perspective on how to make this practice pleasant for the physical body and the emotional body. So I always keep my ears peeled every time Emily opens their mouth to talk. And then for those of us that are new to this process, we're going to go over a bit of the overview of how it works and how our communication works through this strange piece of technology. Some of us may already be taking classes via Zoom, and I'm not sure how universal some of these signs have become in the acro classes, but I'll at least go over the way that it works in this dynamic. The main thing that I want to make sure is that the audio and video work. So if the video cuts out for any reason, please be vocal quickly to let us know so that we're not speaking to just the wall, and we can make sure that our technology is functioning on this end. The audio, we'll be checking in every once in a while to make sure that the audio is working. We'll ask some kind of question. It's usually a question that is like a yes/no question, or just kind of a positive, negative, like, hey, how's your energy kind of thing? Like, do you want to do more of this? Do you want to switch to something else? And so thumbs up is one of our primary forms of communication here, where everyone is muted, and so we have our physical selves to communicate. So can everyone hear? Excellent, excellent, excellent. And just to let you all know what's happening is that I have a camera here that I'm looking at, and then I have a different thing that is projecting on the wall so that we see each one of your screens quite large. Everyone is about the size of a laptop. So we have the ability to look at some good detail here, but if I'm not looking directly at the camera, it's because I'm looking actually at you. And if I'm actually looking in the camera, know that I can't actually see you, so you can make all types of silly faces if I'm actually, pretending to look in your eyes. As I feel like a weather forecaster in this environment. The communications, in addition to that, are one of the most frequent things that people ask is to see a demonstration again. And so we developed a sign for just, can you show that demo again? And it's just to interlace your thumb and your index finger and put it really close to the camera. And that is distracting to us. And we'll say, hey, we want to see that demonstration again. Can you show it again? And so if you do this far away from us, we're not necessarily going to see it, but put it right up to the camera and we'll see it. And we'll show the demo again. If we're in the middle of a sentence or talking to someone else, chances are we still see you. I'm going to do something like this that like points to you, and a thumbs up. That means that I see you, and we will do it. And then I'll probably acknowledge it verbally after I'm done with my sentence, or if Emily's talking, whenever that finishes, we'll show the demo again. If you have a question in general, cover your camera with your hand, and that's equally as distracting, and we'll call on you by name. You can unmute yourself, ask your question, and then mute yourself again for the answer. If you have more to say after you hear the answer, unmute yourself again and just continue to have a conversation as we can pretend to be normal humans in this time where normal humans is a strange thing to think about. But yeah, so if you want to get our attention and have yourself called on, please just cover the camera. And then the other common thing that people desire is to be observed specifically in their next attempt at whatever we're doing. So if you cover your camera and then just point at your eye really close to the camera, that says, hey, watch me. And we'll watch you on your next one and make sure that we give you specific diagnosis on whatever you're doing. In general, beyond that, we'll be looking at all of the screens and diagnosing broadly, but if you would like us to specifically look at you, that is the way to have that done. So those are our basic communications, right? Anything I missed there? Okay.
Just general thumbs up. We'll do that a lot.
We'll do that a lot,
yeah. Right? Workshop. Okay.
And then just to have some awareness of like, this is a strange environment. Some of us are really lucky to be in places that are big Aikido spaces with great flooring, great ceilings. Some of us are working, you know, oh, there's a soft couch behind us, but a hard coffee table in front of us, and this obstacle there and that obstacle here. And so we want to acknowledge that because of the environment that we're in, we may have to modify our practice. And we want to encourage people to not think of the assignments that we're giving as this must be done in its fullest form this moment. In fact, there's going to be a number of things that Emily and I may struggle through even in the demonstrations, as some of the stuff we're only somewhat calibrated in. While we have the technique to be able to execute it physically, we're still constantly calibrating and getting smoother and smoother. And so we want everyone to also be thinking about your practice the same way, is that you're just calibrating constantly and getting more refined in your practice. So don't put a lot of pressure on executing anything in any particular way. Make modifications that work for not only whatever you're dealing with physically, emotionally, cognitively today, but whatever your environmental constraints are, please be respectful of them. If you have something that is hard and sharp near you, please don't do things that are going to come down toward it. And if you are pretty locked into a space that has a lot of obstacles, in our first warm-ups, we want you to take attempts that come to the ground, acknowledging them so that you start to navigate around your physical environmental constraints. So just be aware of what you got. For everyone here, I only see one group. There's a Portland crew that has a group of 4, so they're going to have the luxury of, at certain moments, being able to break from their twosomes and spot each other when needed. And that, I just can't encourage enough as we do more and more of these in the future, is if we can get a 3rd or a 4th person to participate in the room with us, we have the ability to do more when spotters are present. Because spotters aren't generally present for these, and most people are working in groups of 2, we want people to be very conservative with the attempts that they take, and we're going to be changing, or reformulate the content for these classes, knowing that people don't have spotters. So we do want people to be very respectful of not having a spotter and modifying their practice accordingly. Every time that we have an injury, every time that we don't have a spotter, shoot, if we're wearing face masks, we may lose stamina sooner. And anytime that we have any kind of handicap in our practice, we should be respectful and modify accordingly and appropriately for that, not thinking I should be able to do everything that I would do with a spotter in a perfect environment without any type of, restraints. So be gentle with yourselves, be gentle with your partners, and particularly if you're working with somebody that you don't work with a lot, please put less pressure on yourselves and less pressure on your partners to feel like we must execute all these things. We're going to give progressions along the way, and sometimes it means that we're going to be refining 1 or 2 or 3 of the progressions and not 4, 5, and 6 of them, and just really focusing on those first ones again and again and again until they feel safe enough to be able to do some of the other progressions. Fair, everyone?
Encouragement is also grand. Encourage each other. High-five each other.
Yes.
Have fun with each other.
Right. With that, the way that this is going to work is that Emily is going to lead us through a little bit of a warm-up. We're going to individually get our blood moving. I know some of us are in very hot environments, so that should be pretty easy, but some of us just woke up. And so just getting some movement going and making sure that we're doing that in a way that will reduce injury potential. After that, we will start to do some partner warm-ups and then move into content. The content today is essentially 3 different sections that we're going to be working on. There's some crossover between them and then some not crossover between them. So we're looking at, over the course of this multi-hour session, to be able to look at some upright, look at some inverted, and look at some transitions between some of these things that will be able to delve deeper into different parts of our practice. That way, when you're going through your month between these classes, you can start to either specialize in some of those exercises or broadly look at all of them. Sometimes it means that we only do the ones that we're already really good at. Sometimes it means, hey, let's challenge ourselves and do only the ones that are really a struggle for us so that we can refine and broaden our practice more. So over the course of these next couple of hours, we'll give opportunities for all of those things. Any questions before we begin? All right. I know, it's like, no questions? Yeah, is a thumbs down an appropriate thing to do? Yes, it is.
Yeah. Shall we move?
Let's do it.
Okay. Happy Saturday. Let's stand up and get our heart rate up a little bit. Sorry, Paula and Dove. I know you're close to bedtime, but we're still going to get your heart rate up. So let's just start running in place. Draw those knees up toward your chest. And then start bringing your opposite hand over toward your opposite leg and just giving it a little bit of a high five. Nice. And then from here, jump those legs together. And then jump the legs apart and together and apart. Yeah, that looks great. And so each time that you jump those legs apart, getting a little bit deeper into a squat, warm up those hips. And then take a little bit of a pause here, bring your hands toward your legs. And then we're gonna walk one foot forward, and then the other one, and then the other one. Good. Inspiration is Michael Jackson. Thriller.
Yeah.
That makes some people laugh. Okay, cool. Let's jump again. And in and out. Beautiful. This next time that you bring your legs together, we're going to add some twisting. So as you twist to the side, you're going to draw your arms back and then twist toward the other. Yeah, so for those of you that ski, very similar in our movement. Hopefully you're feeling your thighs and your legs. Breathe. And last one. Woo. Beautiful. All right, raise those arms up overhead. We're gonna make this with our hands and then draw circles up overhead. Good. And then other direction. Moving those wrists. Beautiful. Okay, so stretch those fingers out really nice and wide. And then make this with the hands and just go back and forth. Do not understand it. And then off to the side. Keep those fingers extended. We're going to rotate our thumbs down toward the floor and a little bit past. And then rotate the palms upward toward the ceiling and move back and forth here. Really moving from the shoulder joint as we do this. Okay. And then gradually bring the arms up overhead. And then back on down. Keep that motion going. Interlace your fingers. Give yourself a little bit of a wave. And then reverse the direction of that wave. I like seeing that with all the people. And then bring your forearms together and just give a little wiggle. One way, and then the other. Step one foot straight on back, come into a lunge. And stretch those arms up overhead. And while we're in our lunge, we're going to see if we can move our arms. So one arm is going to move forward, other arm is going to move back. If you get lost in direction, just that's me. Gently lower one knee on down to the ground. Just a little bit more. And then place your hands downward toward the floor, extend your front leg. We're going to rotate our toes in. And then rotate your toes on out. And back and forth we go. And you mark hopefully if that feels better. Lex is doing this off of camera. Come back to your lunge, everyone. Reach those arms up one more time. And see if you can use the strength of your hamstrings and that back leg, tuck your back toe, and then lift yourself back up into that lunge. Awesome. Okay, let's switch sides. Time to split your arms the other direction, so whatever arm traveled forward first.
Yeah, I work in one direction, less so in the second.
The knees, one knee down to the floor, that lunge. And then lower the hands down to the ground, extend the leg. And then here is that internal external rotation. Okay. We're gonna do one more thing to get there. Find your way into a little bit of a ball. I'm gonna turn this way just so you can see me a little bit better. Put your knees into your chest and curl your chin toward your chest and start to roll front to back. Rolling all the way to the shoulders. And then once you get a little bit more momentum, you're gonna place those feet, come into a squat, sink the butt down. Yeah, great. If you wanna add a little extra challenge, you can lift one leg up, try to balance, and come back down. And a couple more. We come all the way up to stand. Put those hands together. Good job. Hopefully y'all feel a little bit warmed up. As always, take care of your own body's needs throughout the practice. If you need a little bit more movement in the wrists, especially, or in the feet or the ankles, or the whole body.
It's not uncommon that after starting, we will find a cramp somewhere in the body. And like not getting right back into the practice after that is wise. Take that moment afterwards and re-warm back up, stretch out, do what you need before we get back into practice. No need to pull muscles in an effort for trying to maintain a schedule that is arbitrarily dictated by us. So take care of yourselves. Let's see, the one camera that just came in low, if you have the ability to put both of your names on your screen name, then we can address both of you. And then if you can tilt your camera up so we see less of the floor, that would be ideal for diagnostics. For everyone else, your setups look great, but we'll let you know if that needs to shift. And during certain diagnostics, we may ask you to rotate a bit. What we're going to do initially is just some basic calibration warm-ups. We're going to start off with a plank. We're going to walk the plank. We're going to make some circles, and we'll move into our star inversions and go through some range of motion there. For those of you that have been with us before, you're going to be very familiar with these exercises. And if not, please, well, actually, regardless, feel free to ask questions as you desire. So we're going to start off in our front plank. From front plank, we're going to take and we're going to not pull. We're going to keep our palms pushing only, and we're going to walk down the flyer's legs until we reach the ankles. Once we reach the ankles, the flyer is going to go wide and then come into a tuck and then extend back out. We're maintaining a nice strong arm line, and then the rest of this range of motion is being dictated by the flyer. So bases, we're following here.
Flyers, as you draw your legs out to the side and you hug your knees in toward your chest, really think of swooping and draw the legs in.
More, and then we'll go back up to that long plank, and then we'll walk back up the legs till we reach the hips. From there, you can come down to the ground or transition to star, jump to star, it's up to you. But from star, what we're going to do is we're going to make a shin to foot connection on one side, and then the other foot stays connected to the shoulder, and we're going to take and extend the foot that's on the shoulder to bring the flyer into an upright position. Flyer tries to touch the ground with the free foot next to the base's hips. Did you touch? Yeah. And then we're going to reverse that. I'm going to curl the shoulder foot and extend the shin foot back into the inversion, and then I'm going to reach behind, and we're just going to touch a reverse foot-to-foot connection on that side. And so we can do that a few times on both sides. Shin-to-foot connection, extend the shoulders, touch the ground, and reverse. Cool. So we just want to start with those two things to calibrate with each other. Again, if that's something that feels like we don't want to do that full expression because it might not feel stable, or we're feeling like there's a little bit of pull, we're a little bit tight in the morning here, please respect whatever your bodies and your partner's bodies are asking for, make the modifications, and then get into it. Any questions? I see most of us are already in it. Please feel free to ask as you need. 3, 2, 1, go for it.
Katie and Isaac, real nice, real strong in the arms. Careful.
Welcome back, Lo and Gina. Lo and Gina, did you see the demo? Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Great.
Sort of?
Sort of.
Gina, you want to see it again?
This is again? Yeah? Okay.
We'll walk the plank. Go wide, come into a tuck, extend back out. You're missing the tuck part. Go wide. Go wide, and then flyer comes into a tuck. And then extends back out. Good. So you do that a few times. And then if you can just watch this demo. We'll go like we're doing a 4-step, we'll go reverse shin to foot, and then try to bring the flyer upright, and then reverse that, and touch foot behind, and then that's it. We do that a few times on each side. Cool. Excellent, excellent, excellent. If anyone has any questions on technique, please feel encouraged to ask. I hear you, Sabrina. My breakfast's talking to me the same way too. Nice exit, Larissa and Bobby.
See some good communication. Hannah and Mal, if you need any assistance, let us know. I'm distracted by the beating on the wall because my grandparents have that in their venue.
Good, give it another 30, 45 seconds. We'll move on. All right. Come on in, come on in, come on in.
And Bobs are also welcome.
Any questions there? Okay. One of the things that we are going to be talking a lot about today is figuring out how to maintain tension in our connection points without bringing or introducing too much tension and without letting that tension dissipate too much, and really exploring what the right and appropriate amount of tension for each thing that we do is. So that'll be a reoccurring theme, and in the transitions going between the Shinderfoot and, or sorry, the reverse Shinderfoot in the star transitions that we just did, we're observing techniques where some bases want to keep their elbows straight the entire time, and some bases want their flyers to keep the elbows extended the entire time, because I can see that the bases are bending such that the flyers get those elbows extended. And neither one of those is necessarily wrong, but we do want to explore why somebody would have their elbows all the way straight and somebody would have their elbows all the way bent, or is it appropriate or more appropriate to have everybody with some bend in the elbows so that that control is shared between the two people? And so different things that we do, and depending on our proportions and the length of our limbs, may dictate why some of us may choose different alternatives than others. And so we're not going to be able to necessarily give overarching directions for these things that are going to be universal, but we will talk about why it might be advantageous for one technique over the other as we're going through. And if there's something in your particular anatomy that speaks to like, oh, this actually doesn't work for me for whatever reason, we want to help you go through the process of diagnosing why and what will work best in those areas that we're trying to maintain a certain level of tension. So please keep that in mind throughout all of this so that we can address that as we're going through it. The next thing we want to do is just go through a bit of range of motion in our side star positions. We want bases to have good internal and external rotation warmed up, so we're going to do this largely in an effort for bases internal and external rotation. And flyers, we want to figure out how we can help exaggerate those ranges of motion by different positions that we might take and move through. And so we as flyers are not just rigid objects, we are active participants, even in moments that it seems like we're trying to be just nice and engaged. It's not as simple as just maintaining engagement. So let's go to like a reverse inside star. So we're going to move into a reverse inside star here. And so we have this nice triangle shape here, which is nice and structurally stable. As I make a bit of an external rotation, I might bend my knee a little bit. I can also take my foot to the inside of the flyer's ankle and help exaggerate my external rotation. And so flyers having slightly resisting the base's foot here is going to help the base get more rotation. If we overdo it, we're going to make it difficult to find the turn. If we underdo it, we're going to not turn at all. As we're moving into this other rotation internally, I'm going to bring a foot to the shoulder blade and see if we can find a little bit of internal rotation. As that happens, it's likely that my foot wants to blade edge into my flyer by the pinky side. And so I'm really thinking about extending through the inner line of my leg so that my foot stays soft as we internally rotate. And we'll take time and do this on both sides. You don't have to hold it as long as we are. We're doing this for visual and demonstration purposes. Internal rotation, external rotation. We get a little more resistance there. We just communicate what we need, and we can find a little bit more.
So that top of foot to calf connection, I'm pushing my calf back into Lux's top of foot.
Let's come down. We're just going to turn about 45 degrees so that we can show that particular connection. So I take and poke my toes around the Achilles, the calf, and then depending on how much extension in the hip the flyer gets here will dictate how much rotation I get. So if there's more of a pike, I get less. And if there's less of a pike, I get more. Oh yeah. So go through those ranges of motion. For some of us, probably have enough practice under our belt in this range of motion that you can even take and flip the foot that's on the hip, the one that's actually supporting, and you can turn a reverse inside star into an outside star and continue to make these rotations. So if that didn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. If it did make sense to you, you're free to actually make a full 180-degree rotation in that if you have the technique to do so. It's not really the focus of the class today, but I know some people already have that. Let us know if you have any questions, but give it a shot in 3, 2, 1. Range of motion in our side stars. Just lubricating the joints and calibrating with each other. So we're doing this as an exercise to make sure that we know where the tight spots in our partners are. Flyers, you're going to be able to feel a lot of what's going on with the base. Base, you're going to be able to feel a lot of what's going on with the flyer here.
Gina, looking great. Bring your top leg a little bit farther forward so you can see it. Yeah.
Don't worry, Caitlin, no one saw that. You need a bump later. No, there's a different bird down the hall. A little smaller one. Looking great, looking great. Give it another 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Nice ranges of motion.
Right?
Yeah, everyone.
Bases are doing a great job keeping this over their hips. Flyers are doing a great job keeping their rotation stacked over that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Nice work, Isaac.
Caitlin and Sabrina, I love it. Yeah, I saw that. Support for each other.
All right. Come on in. Any questions there? Excellent, 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 excellent. The next bit of time, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at a number of things in foot to hand. How many people here have an education in foot to hand? Okay. How many people here need more education in foot to hand? I mean, I know all of us, but I mean that like, okay, cool. So we're going to go over some basic techniques, and we're going to look at the foundation of it from a placement perspective, where we should be putting the energy in this, and then we're going to look at what we're going to do with foot to hand once we have foot to hand. If I may borrow your foot. That's even fine right there. Let's get closer. Look, it's a foot. Foot puppetry. Okay. So across the foot, there's like 5 major things that I look at. There's this spot right here. This is the part that goes right up the skeletal line of the flyer all the way to the hip. If they're standing completely straight, we can usually even push through here and find the flyer's shoulders. That's what we're seeking. There's this ridge right here, which is the ball of the foot, which is kind of a place that a flyer can try to find the base's wrist width in a foot to hand. And then there's the toes, which are kind of our last ditch effort that we want to try to, or that we could make some kind of contact with, but we don't want to put too much tension actually into the toes. So we're looking at the primary and the secondary. This we're going to try to avoid, and then we're going to look at these two ridges here, the outside and the inside edge. So that's 4 and 5. And we want to know that as we move to the outside edge, we're going to start to lose some stability in the ankle. And through the inside edge, we'll also lose some stability, but most people have a harder time losing stability through the inside because much extension through the inside edge is complicated. So if things are feeling complicated, we encourage people to actually extend a bit more through the inside edge and then really think about this part of the heel. That's where we're going to be trying to put some amount of weight, and then the rest of the weight comes through here. And then we're going to look at, can we look at your hand also? And then we're going to look at the base's hand. And the base's hand has kind of the same ridges. Is that we have this ridge here, which is like, if we look at the very bottom of the wrist, we want to go to the inside of the palm, right at the back side of that dent. And that right there is what we're going to try to align with this part of the foot. Is that right? No, that's for a reverse foot to hand. So for a foot to hand, what we're going to do is that flyers, you want to pay attention to this part right here, because the ball of your foot, depending on our anatomy proportions, are going to be aligned there. And then this part here, bases, this is the part we want you to focus on. This is the part between the index and the middle knuckle, the inside of the knuckle. And what we're going to try to do, and I'll do this here myself, is we're trying to get our hand to a place where we can push up through these knuckles. We're going to try to ignore the thumb and try to get them to articulate the fingers pulled back and push up through that. Now that's difficult. A lot of bases end up in a position that's like this rather than like this. And we want to start to shift into being able to extend through the knuckles and not have them cave away. Is that visually illustrative? Can y'all see that well?
And also, you all have hands. Look at your own and mimic this position.
We don't want it to cave in, we want it to push out.
Yeah.
From there, we have the fingers. After we've established foundation, structure, extension, where we have a lot of power moving through our partner structure, then we have the fingers that can help wrap around and reinforce that grip. If we start with the fingers, we tend to do this. So we want to start with the knuckles so that when we use the fingers, they're only reinforcing the stability of the forearm, the stability of the wrist itself. Does that make sense, everyone? Excellent, 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 excellent. So that's what we're trying to see. Now, one of the things that Emily had us doing in the beginning were these like ski jumps. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is that one of the most important things in a foot to hand is ankle stabilization. And a lot of people miscommunicate that the ankle needs to be locked into position. And it's not true. The ankle doesn't need to be locked into position. The ankle needs to be stable through a range of motion. So if the ankle is stable through some and then collapses in different parts and destabilizes, that's very difficult for the base's wrist to balance, and it's going to have a chain reaction up the flyer's body. So flyers, we want to know that we can cultivate and continue to strengthen the ankles in every range of motion. And so we should be able to have a little bit of a lift, a lot of a lift, a bit of rotation, a lot of rotation, and even sinking in and still have stability in that ankle. One of the ways that we do that is that we engage the muscles through the shins, through the quads, the hamstrings, and the glutes, and the abdominals. And this will help make it so that whatever we're doing with the ankle doesn't have a lot of instability above it. So we want to first be able to at least know that we can engage everything and hold to focus the ankles into stability. And so that's where we're going to start. Flyers, for those of us that are still developing comfort in this, we want to encourage that you can use the base's feet for stability. But if you are, we want you to use as little contact with your hand on the base's foot as possible. and we want to still not sacrifice the shape of your hips and ribs. And so if you're reaching forward, don't reach forward like this in bases. If they're reaching forward like this, bring your foot closer so that your flyer can stand upright and still maintain this shape as we are trying to cultivate that foot to hand ankle stability. Make sense, everyone? All right, I know that's a big preamble and review for a lot of us, but for those of us that have practiced under different techniques, maybe some of that stuff sounds a little bit different. And at the end of this, let's see how it looks in practice. I'm gonna start with my elbows on the ground. There's a few ways that we can get into this. Flyers can show a foot to the base. I like it high enough that I can see it easily. I take the grip. I'm going to align these knuckles right with that part of the foot in front of the heel. I take a single finger and I barely have it wrapped around the edge of the heel, knowing that gravity eventually will end up about here. So I'm gonna really shortchange that at first so that it can end up in a better place initially. I push through that index knuckle and the second knuckle to really find the foundation or the structural line of the flyer, and then I use the fingers to wrap around from that. I bring my elbow to the ground, I lied. I can bring my hand to the ground overhead, and then the flyer can stand on that, show me their second foot. And then I take that and do the same thing with it, and I can bring this elbow down, flyer can stand into that as we move into foot to hand, and we hold. And the first one, we just want to do a little bit of a hold, and maybe a little bit of range of motion where we go slightly back and slightly forward, and I want flyers to lead this, and we're going to talk about how flyers lead that. Actually, Emily, can you talk about how flyers lead that with the abdominals?
Yeah, so the flyer has the ability to push the abdominals forward. Notice I'm kind of like puffing my belly out, and then I can draw my abdominals in toward my spine, stride slightly back.
Now, this is pretty powerful, so you're going to take your base on a ride, and so make very small movements at first so that this doesn't make it so that the base can't follow. If it goes too far, it'll come down. I can also keep my feet up the entire time so that even as flyers are trying this, we're not putting weight into the base's legs, but we're just stabilizing. And we're going to find a little bit of range of motion. So you can see my forearms drifting forward and back as I'm shifting to stay underneath the flyer. Cool? Alternatively, we can use the base's feet to help stand in. I still encourage to still go through these motions as if we're not using the feet so that we learn this step in over time. But use the feet as needed. Let's talk just briefly about that dismount. Ideally, in a great world here, we're going to come into position, find some balance. Bases bring the legs down, and then flyers, bringing the shoulders forward first, come out of a foot to hand. And coming out of a foot to hand is led by flyers. Flyers, you're going to bring the shoulders forward, and when we no longer have the ability to stay in the foot to hand, we just land on our feet. We are not jumping out of hands. That is a great way to hurt your base, and probably a great way to hurt yourself because you're going to have to catch yourself because your base is not going to likely stay under you if that happens. So we're just leaning forward until we need to let go. Bases, we never flick the flyer's feet out of the hands. We just open the hands and let the forearms extend a little bit, let the elbows extend a little bit, and then the flyer can come down. This gets a little bit funky. I think if base and flyer hold on to feet during that, it's okay to do a few times, but I encourage you to get rid of the feet in that dismount as soon as possible. So first one, we just want to establish, do we have the structural alignment of our anatomy where we have tension moving up through our anatomical lines? And can we do a basic range of motion led by flyers? Flyers, be gentle with that range of motion and not hurt the base's wrists. Any questions? All right, give it a shot in 3, 2, 1. Perfect timing, Julie. Would be nice. Headphones. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I imagine there's a few of us that are used to only leading flyers and not used to having flyers lead us. So this is a really beautiful exercise to watch some of us go through, where we get to follow and not lead.
And it's also always shared, so forward, backward, words you can use.
Good. Rachel, relax your hands.
Yeah. Also, Carmel, I noticed that. Let your arms relax. Flyers are living human things, not boards.
Not boards. Yeah, Carmel.
I heard my name.
Oh.
We were just encouraging you to allow your upper body to relax. Yeah.
Renee and Emily, can I have you get a little bit closer to the camera? I'd love to see the grip you have on that foot. That's great.
It's good to see you bases continuing to warm up your wrists. Take some breaks as needed.
And I fear that that's actually a little bit too much toward the toes. I would have at least the tip of my fingernail over the edge of the heel so that you protect your index finger and don't have it broken.
Nice, Chris and pork chop.
Yes, like that with the toes pointed down. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Gravity happens, slide happens. Good. Did we lose here? Oh, no, we lost someone. That's okay. Gotcha. That looked fine. Before I wasn't sure. It looked like the hand was more folded rather than rounded, but on that last one, the hand looked more rounded, so cool. Any questions? No? You're gonna have to unmute yourself if you want me to hear.
Hi. Oh, hi. Sorry, we're looking at two different things. My question is, like, the ball of my foot does not need to be in her hand at all.
You know, it's not every hand is going to be large enough to span an entire foot. You know, I'm somebody that doesn't have a very large hand either. And so if I'm working with somebody with a foot that is significantly larger than my hand, the toes and the ball of the foot may not end up on my palm if my finger is going to be compromised because of that process. So I think of this as being really the most important part, because this is right up through the structural line of the flyer, and I want that to be a very strong part of my hand.
Okay, totally. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. And then pork chop, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know how to shift my weight with my abs. Like I can move them around, but I don't think I'm doing it with my core.
Okay. So if you stand up and just on your own feet, and you turn 90 degrees just so that we can watch you, and then stick your stomach out. No, those are your hips. So keep your hips in line. And just the abdominals, just push the abdominals forward and see if the weight shifts toward your toes. And then suck the abdominals toward the spine and see if the weight shifts toward the heels. Now, don't move the shoulders forward when you suck the abdominals back.
And pork chop, if touch is helpful, you can bring your hands to your own abdominals, so you can like fill into your hands and then the hands will be back.
And then pork chop, if you watch me, where am I? Oh, here I am. Okay. So if you watch me, what we don't want to do is we don't want to do this. We don't want the hips to move. We don't want the shoulders to move. We want that to stay in one place, so I lock everything nice and tight, and then I just push the abdominals forward, or I just suck the abdominals back. And then that should have some shift of the weight moving either toward your toes or toward your heels. And then pork chop, when you think of abdominals, I'm seeing like these, but don't ignore these. Like really let the bottom abdominals be part of that push-pull.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is something you can practice at any time.
Yeah, yeah. It makes people look at you funny, which is kind of the way I like people looking at me. Any other questions? All right. We're going to work a few more ranges of motion in foot to hand. Let's go for some swivels. Okay. So the next range of motion that we're going to look for in a foot to hand is we're going to be in our foot to hand, and we're going to try to rotate the flyer's heels toward each other and the flyer's toes toward each other. Now, some of us have an extended foot to hand, and some of us have a foot to hand with the elbows on the ground. And we don't care which one you do. If you're doing extended, it is inherently more dangerous because the flyer is further away from the ground and we have less surface contact on the ground. So we destabilize the base, and height is more dangerous as we move into acrobatics because mass times acceleration increases weight as it moves toward the ground. So the further you travel, the heavier you are as you hit the ground, the more dangerous it is. That's why lying down is pretty safe if you're gonna fall. Crickets. Okay, nobody got it. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, look at that. You can't fall from there. You're pretty safe. If you're doing this extended, please make sure that this is not the first time you're doing it if there's no spotter present. What we're going to seek to do is we'll move into our foot to hand, and we're going to try to bring the heels toward each other and then the toes toward each other, and the heels toward each other and the toes toward each other. And you can see that in that practice, I'm moving my elbows because I'm limited in my wrists of how much I can turn out. But if I move my elbows, I can turn my wrists a bit more. And so bases, if we feel locked there, we can shift our elbows. I lift up slightly, move and place back down, lift up slightly, move, place back down. Make sense, everyone?
Flyers, there is the inherent desire to want to flail and move the arms. See if you can keep your arms relaxed. All that movement in your upper body will translate down to the base and be confusing. So keep the upper body still and relaxed as much as you can.
We can also do variations of this. If that is the base level of this, we can also extended. And in extended, we can start to bring it closer together, bring those heels together, and bring those toes together, and bring those heels together, and bring the toes together. Also, if we're low, we can have our feet up, and the flyers can, without putting weight into it, they can stabilize, and we can do the internal and external rotation there. So a variety of alternatives depending on what is appropriate for you and your partner there. The foundational one would be to have the elbows on the ground and find that rotation. It's fine to do it extended. It's fine to do it supported with the flyer's hands on the base's feet. Any questions? Yeah, Brent and Nicole.
As a flyer, when we're doing the low and your shoulders are, as a base, your shoulders are going wide. So flyer's legs getting wider. I think I focus, I'm assuming, and I think I use the inside of my thighs to keep them tight. But I think sometimes I'm overstraining them. And I don't know if there's something else I could be thinking about to help not overstrain the insides of my thighs.
In that external rotation that you're in as a flyer, also use your glutes, for sure. Adductors and glutes.
And then the adductors are useful, and it's not to not use them, but it's like we said in the beginning, is we want to find what the appropriate amount of tension for any particular balance is. And so we don't want you to fire 100% or 0. We want you to find that spectrum of engagement. Can I take 10% off? Can I take 15% off if I'm over engaging? And start to taper it off, and then you'll find that in the beginning, the muscles fire quickly in a fast twitch, trying to figure out where that is. And with practice, that twitch gets slower and slower, and you'll be able to really refine and tune into, okay, I know the difference between 37 and 38% of engagement. Right now, don't worry about that. Work in like 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, and then you can start to break it down into smaller chunks of engagement. Cool?
6.5% and, you know, 10 1/4 over here.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe 12 1/4, but yeah, that's about right. All right, give it a shot in 3, 2, 1. And let us know if you have any questions or want to see any of that again. Like they're getting looser now. So you think it looks like there's too much tension now? Gina and Lo, how much tension is in the hands to foot connection? Brent, 1 second. Is there a lot of weight in the hands on the feet, or nah? If in your next attempt, see if you can just get a little bit less connection to the feet and be lighter and lighter, even if you still touch the entire time, just with less weight. And then Nicole, Brent?
So on the internal rotation as a flyer, I can't really use my butt. And I use like the pelvic muscles to like tighten it inwards that way.
Yeah, if I'm internally rotating, you're using just a different part of the glutes. You're not using necessarily this, but you are using the internal parts of the glute. But then, yeah, you have the front sides of the quads, you have the adductors, and then the hip flexors will be active as a part of that as well. So you have all of these.
Yeah, I think when I was using the butt on the internal rotation, it made it harder to notice when he was starting to go back the other direction in rotation.
Okay, so this is a great time that verbal communication starts to play a role. And we say internal, 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 external, 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 and start to find a rhythm with it, or just say shift, 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 whatever communication works for you. There's no one way to do it, but just something that delineates we're shifting to the next thing. Please always feel encouraged to use your voices as part of the communication package. Yep. All right, give it just one more attempt. One more attempt. And then all right, we have one more range of motion that we want to have y'all attempt. So don't blow out the wrists. And then Tamara and John, I'm going to encourage you to hold on to your flyer's thighs rather than the arms. Excellent. Reason being is that when we hold on to the flyer's arms, the flyer doesn't train their abdominals. If we hold on to the legs, the flyer still gets to train the abdominals for stability. Cool. Any questions? Also, I just want to applaud Portland again in this moment, the group of 4 for having the luxury and having spotters. Really beautiful to see. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, any other questions? All that work out decently enough? Okay, great. This next range of motion, what we're going to seek to do is we're going to try to be in our foot to hand, come into a squat for flyers. And in fact, let's actually pause there. Let's have flyers come to a squat, come back to stand, and then have flyers start to just make some movements with their body where we can go through a range of motion here, bend everything, but keep the ankles really rigid. So if the ankles start to lose stability in this process, we'll do less range of motion. And as long as the ankles are stable, we want to see how much flyers can move in a foot-to-hand flyers. Understand that this is a vulnerable moment, not only for yourself, because you're at risk of actually being injured in coming down here, but the base's wrists are really vulnerable in this position. So if we move erratically and if we move fast and unpredictably, it's likely that we can hurt our base's wrists. So if we move nice and slow, bases will be able to predict the movements that are coming next and engage appropriately for that. And we want to make sure that we're working smooth and progressively toward stronger and stronger connections here. So please move nice and slowly in respect of that. Go squat and then go to stand and then whatever ranges you want actually. And we're going to do it low. So flyers can come into a squat, and flyers can come back to stand, and then flyers can start to make some movements.
So flyers, this is an exercise in stability and mobility. The stability is in the ankle, but the mobility is in the rest of the body. So training that balance for yourself. Woo! Okay, I could probably do more.
There are a couple of things that we're going to show from a safety perspective here, but one of the things that I want to say is that as a flyer is doing that, as a base, what I'm thinking is, how much can I grip harder and harder and harder as my flyer brings more movement into it? If I want a flyer to maintain a safe movement for me, I must, as a base, try to be as stable as the ground. The more that I feel like the ground, the more the flyer's not going to try to do things to overcorrect and hurt me in the process. And so the more movement comes in, I grip stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Between the two of us, who's likely to have more stamina in this? And so it's up to me to say down, or I only have 5 seconds left of this, because I'm going to get tired trying to grip stronger and stronger and stronger. So flyers, be listening for your base. They're probably going to tap out before you do. From a safety perspective, there's a couple of things that we can do here. One is that during this, of course, I can have the feet up as we have before. And so that as flyers are moving through this range of motion, if something goes funky, flyers can just grab the feet. Now, I don't have the feet here. I bring the feet right next to the thighs so that the flyer doesn't reach forward, they reach down to get it. Now, if we want to try to not do that, I can keep one foot there, and I can bring one heel behind on the other side. And this way I have trapped in case something goes funky, I can lock the flyer back into alignment and then release again. And so I can be a bit of a self-spot, or I can spot from the base's perspective this way. Make sense? All right, so whichever technique works for you, bottom line is please be gentle with each other. We want to train. We want to train hard. We want to train intelligent. But we want to train sustainably, something that will not increase or introduce or encourage injury into the practice. Any questions? All right, give it a shot in 3, 2, 1. Find a nice dynamic range of motion.
Maybe one of Sabrina, but yeah, just keep doing whatever you're doing. It's great.
They're from Santa Cruz. You're not allowed to have a bad disposition if you live in Santa Cruz. Life by the beach.
Nice strong squat, Carmel. That was great.
And then flyers, remember you can, as you're going through that range of motion, knees don't have to stay straight. You can bend the knees also as long as you keep the ankles stable. Rachel, that's great range of motion, looking really good. Ed, very stable, nice grip. That's work, huh, bases? That'll train your grip real good.
I can go outside and just
Yeah, you can go outside, but I want that window closed because I don't want the burden.
Julia Nestor. Wonderful.
Are they showing their love for each other?
Yes.
Nice.
Ooh, nice twist, Katie and Isaac.
All right. Save a little bit of grip strength. We have one more foot to hand exercise we want to go through now. Yeah, Nicole. That's some stabilization right there. You want to talk about shifting between hip flexors, adductors, and glutes. You got it. All right, come on in, come on in, come on in.
Thank you, pork chop.
Yes. All right. How did that work out? Decently? Cool. One last thing we'd like to do is go into a foot to hand. This time we are going to come to an extended foot to hand. In that extended foot to hand, flyers can still be holding onto the base of feet if the extended foot to hand is new for you. We want to come to a squat the same way. And then we're going to shift our weight onto one side, and all flyers, really everyone can practice this right now just on the ground. We're going to shift to one side, and we're going to take the other foot and extend it out to the knee being straight. We're going to bring that foot back in. We're going to shift to the second side, and we're going to extend the first foot out. And then bring it back in. So we want to be in the squat and start to do kind of a nice squat dance that's going to be done in a nice slow motion. If this feels stable, you can do it. Just kick my butt. If this feels stable, we can do it without holding on to the base's feet, but please feel encouraged to hold on to the base's feet. This is one of those things that I find easier in a squat, but I do see some students feel more comfortable being in like a half squat. And so we're a bit more upright. And so it depends on, you know, the flexibility of your ankles, your knees, your hips, and if there's any range of motion that don't work for you, please modify so that they do work for you. We'll step up. Flyer will come into a squat. You can have feet. And then we're going to extend out, bring it back in, and extend out, and bring it back in. You want to do this one?
I've never.
Or we just haven't done it
We
together?
haven't done it together.
All right. Cool. Rest. I will I'll bring your feet closer to the ground before. And if I'm bringing it ever back down overhead, you can even stand on my hands, and you don't have to come out. You want to try it without, or you want to keep it with? Sounds like keep it with.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is exactly how that communication goes. I hear any hesitation in my partner's voice. I'm like, oh yeah, well then let's not worry about taking the hands or the hand to foot connection out of the equation. Let's keep it in. For those of you that feel confident taking it out, fine, take it out. But there's no extra credit points you get for doing so. So please be wise to your own body and to your partner's, and take whatever variation makes the most sense for you. Any questions in the technique for this? All right, well, give it a shot. Let us know if you need to see it again. Let us know if you want us to watch you or if you have any questions. And we'll give it a shot in 3, 2, 1.
Lo, did you have a question?
No. And for those of you that are on computers, if you hit your space bar, that'll unmute you. So, Lo, if you have a question, let us know.
Caitlin and Sabrina. Caitlin, is there? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Caitlin's space.
Flyer, Sabrina. Yeah. Try to sink your tailbone down more and lift your chest up in your squat. Like bring your. Let's come down. There you go. I'm noticing your squat is kind of coming forward. See if you can draw like the base of your pelvis more toward your heels so your chest comes more upright rather than leaning forward. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a matter of how much weight do you have in your feet versus your hands. And so that the more that you were in your first position, there's a lot of weight in your hands. And as we're moving more to the foot to hand, you'll find that position that Emily just described for more of a foot to hand. Oh my goodness. Now you made Mama mad. Mama just got run over. We're speaking about pets, not partners here. Which is fine, especially as bases need that. Yeah. Bases, as much as you want flyers to put weight into your feet to take pressure off of your hands, it's fine to communicate that. Katie, do you have any deeper squat than that? Now we're talking.
Nice.
And go slower. Y'all can balance this. I'm letting you use your feet only, the hands to foot only because this might be new for you, but I know both of your practices, you don't need them. So more and more weight in the hands, less and less weight in the feet. Except for you, Katie, you're going to do the opposite. More weight in the feet, less weight in the hands. And then Lo and Gina. Lo, I want to make sure that you're bringing your feet close enough to your hands that Gina has access to them. The more you bring your feet away from your face, the more Gina's going to be reaching for it, which will not serve you, Lo. Be self-serving. Keep your feet close enough for your flyer to use them. Kind of the same thing for you, Robbie. Robbie, bring your feet closer to your head so that, so that there's not as much reach to utilize them. Very nice. Very nice.
Nice, Rachel and Ed. Way to move slowly. It looks really smooth.
Cool. All right. And then come on in. It's not bad, Nestor, but as you do that, you want to make sure that as we go off to one side, we don't want to go too far over this ankle. We want to stay on top of it. So don't let it go too far. Yeah. Well, and I know that Nestor and Julie are going to teach this kind of stuff, so I want to make sure that they're going to set their students up right too. Yeah. All right, come on in, come on in, come on in after your last attempts here. Get them all in, Hannah. Nice. All right, any questions there? We did notice that this was not necessarily the most intuitive movement for some of us. It was likely new for some of us. So if you have questions, we want to encourage you to ask them. This is an educational environment and you have, paid to participate in it. So please, we're working for you. Let us know if there's anything we can answer. Pork chop, you got something?
Yeah, I'll ask a question. I have a question about weight distribution when your legs are like going to the side. Are you maintaining like 50-50 weight? Or are you varying into the straight leg and totally getting rid of weight in the extended leg?
Yeah, although the leg is not straight, you're bearing weight into the squat leg and
Yes.
taking weight out of the extended leg.
Yes.
Yeah. The one that, as we shift to one side, we're really taking the weight off of the other one almost entirely and really focusing on this being the weight-bearing limb. And these are training techniques moving into more mono-limb work.
Yeah, I find the more I do that, I have a tendency to push him out with the leg that I'm squatting into. As I try and put more weight into it, it pushes out to the side. And then I'm like straddling instead of.
Yeah, so part of that might be the angle in which you're extending your leg. The one that you're extending, if you're extending it in a place that like locks your hip in some way, that might be pushing the other arm. And so you can play with different ranges. Some people extend the leg more like back behind them. Some people extend it more in front. So between you and Chris, see where Chris's strength is based on which way you extend out. And then Chris, a little bit of external rotation with your arm might also help utilize the lat and stabilize the deltoid for that position and won't push it out as much. If you internally rotate, you're more likely to be pushed out. A little external rotation will lock it in and maybe create greater stability for the balancing arm. Any other questions? Because that kind of anatomy stuff goes far. We want to make sure that we're studying those techniques. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do a very complicated series of, or a transition that has like 3 or 4 things that are all happening at the same time. And while the transition itself isn't necessarily the most complicated thing we do, we want to use it as a vehicle to study how multiple limbs can be doing different things at the same time, and we have to keep track of all of them, and how we can utilize the partnership to make it so that that one person doesn't have to remember all of it, and that we can really be helping each other through that process. So we're going to be looking at going from a inside star to a reverse shin to foot. And I'm not sure exactly what angle will work for this, so if it doesn't work right, if y'all could just walk around us and get to the side that's good, that would be great.
Yeah, just pop out through the screen.
Yeah, and just walk around. You can just walk to the other side. There's plenty of room over here.
That was Joe.
So we're gonna start off in our inside star position. We're going to bend the knee so that we can grab the second hand in a hand-to-hand grip, and the flyer is going to bring the first leg across in front, and we're going to turn so that we're in a reverse shin to foot. And then step out. Cool. In fact, next time will you step through? Perfect. All right. So there's a few things that are happening here. Here we have a rotation, and then a placement after a flyer does a contraction, and then the flyer can step through. What tends to happen in this transition is that the bases make connection too soon, and it ends up looking like this. And here, what ended up happening, if you can see here, can we release the sound, is that I have this much of my foot that's not being utilized. And I have all of the utilization in the part of my foot that holds the most tension. So it's not going to be the most comfortable or the most usable for transitions. So instead, we want flyers to be able to come and bring the knee to the chest, stay compressed so that the base can lead with the heel and make the heel connection first.
So flyers, notice how I'm really bringing my thigh in toward my abdominals. Lots of compression. I'm trying to slow that down as much as I can so that Lux can find more of my shin for a better connection.
Can we go backwards?
Yeah.
And can we, once we make connection with the heel, can we release this just to show the camera?
Yeah.
So here, we have connection just at the heel, and then I rotate so that the toes go across the rest of the shin. You can keep the hand connected. It will be much more stable and safe feeling. We just didn't want to block it off from the camera. So that connection point is going to determine how much bend the base's knee is going to have on the hip connection and how much extension in the arms we're going to need to keep the flyer's head up. And that's the thing that this likely will have the feeling of is that when we were doing this before, one of the things that Emily was noting to me was that if we don't have good connection in the arms here, and we do this, we end up where if the elbows drop to the ground, the flyer feels really not very stable here because their head is moving toward the ground. And so we want to make sure that we can keep the arms up so that the flyer can feel the head continuing to go up as well. And that's going to be a big difference between having the flyer feel confident in this movement, which will be more stabilizing for the base, or if the flyer feels that they have to protect themselves, which means that they're going to be doing things that may destabilize the base in this process. So bases, that's our job then, to make sure that we're giving appropriate support for the parts of the body that are most crucial through the connection points that we have, so that we can make it, so that we can make this transition in a way that is going to be safest feeling for the flyer, which will reinforce the stability of the base. Does that make sense, everyone? Excellent, excellent, excellent. I appreciate everyone bearing with my long sentences. Give it a shot in 3, 2, 1.
And everyone has unique bodies within the partnership that you're working in. So know that the way that we're doing it might be different to you.
Yeah, Josh?
Was your left foot after, at the end of the move, was it starting to rotate into a reverse plank, or was it starting to go away?
It was starting to go away. Yeah, that foot comes off.
Okay, John and Tamara. Rachel and Ed, I have a campfire on their screen.
I know. And then Isaac and Katie, in that shin to foot connection, and really Isaac, it's because your legs are very long, if it starts to feel, Katie, if you start to feel really compressed in your upper body and it feels a little bit wobbly there, and you're trying to get a little more extension, then Isaac, you would bend your leg a little bit more than what you're seeing in the demonstration because my legs aren't as long as yours yet. And you can get a little bit more extension through Katie's arms that way. I'm coming for you, Isaac. One day I'm gonna be taller than you. One day maybe I'll be as tall as Katie.
I mean, right now.
Yeah. And so then Katie, when you're pushing, in that last one, you're pushing back this way a little bit. And so really find the foundation of Isaac's arms and push down into them and make sure that we're not pushing back, but pushing down.
Nice hand animal. Good.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking to. But wait till you see what we do with it. Yeah, me too. Renee and Emily, I'm not sure who the flyer and who the base is. So I'll say base in that group. Are you an Emily? Who's the Emily? Okay, Emily. So Emily, which I may or may not remember, but Emily may.
Same name.
But Emily, in that moment, I want you to think that if it starts to feel like Renee gets too far away from you, to bend your knees. That's going to be the greatest vehicle you have to bring Emily back to you, rather than feeling like you can do it with the arms. Use your legs to bring your flyer closer to you. Yeah. Better. And even now, if you bend that a little bit more, but keep the arms straight as you do that. Yes, that right there, when it tipped backwards, that's what we're seeking, is so that you can control your forward back.
Nice break shot.
Cool.
In that moment, if you bend that knee a little bit more, yeah.
All right, come on in. We used to use those as signs for where to cut the film. I'm no longer cutting the film, but we're just already to Pavlovian to stop it. We're studying, more than everything, an amount of tension that we're feeling in any particular connection point, and then we're studying how that tension is usable in different parts of our bodies. And so we're seeing a few groups, and I was just speaking with Emily and Renee about this, where if there's the legs extended fully, and we start to have so much tension in the arms that the flyer is pitched forward, it's really tough to get back out of it. And then if we bend the knee so that the arms have more give to them and we can utilize them more, the flyer may tip too far backwards. And so we want to find where that balance point is so that we can use just the right amount of tension to make it so that we can direct any one of these movements in any way. And in everything that we do, we're constantly having to recalibrate where that appropriate amount of tension is. It might be in the beginning of my practice, my body is shorter and more compressed, and I may need different modifications as we go through our practice, and I get more limber and I get longer and extended through some of my body, that I may have to change some of the bend in order to maintain the same amount of tension. And so it's something that we're constantly recalculating. Any questions? Cool. So what we want to do is we just want to take a look at getting back to that inside star. Some of us already know this piece as the getaway. And we're going to be looking at making a nice cycle through this, and then we're going to look at what we're going to do with the getaway once we have the getaway. The next piece, as we step back into the inside star, has a lot of things happening at the same time, and we're going to talk about them and see how many of them you're going to be able to remember when you're actually in this practice. And some of us already know it through muscle memory, but we want you to actually know it cognitively as well, because it's going to be useful for other things that we do from it. So we'll start off the same way. We're going to make this connection super compressed. And then here, if I'm extended all the way, this gets very tippy forward. If I bend it too much, it gets very tippy backwards. So we find just the right amount of tension that we can utilize here. Here, the flyer is going to take and extend the leg and turn it a bit. I'm going to release the back leg and make the connection to the hip. And while I bend the knee at the hip, I'm extending the foot at the ankle and bending the arm under the shoulder. So all of those things happen at the same time. If one of them doesn't, you're going to see that it starts to get a little bit wonky. Or if you talk too much about them as you're doing it. So 1, 2, 3. As a base, my focus is on the head of my flyer more than everything else. And so I want to make sure that I have some visual to the flyer's head at all times, knowing that that's the most important thing. Even if I mess up and I don't get the perfect placement on the hip, I would rather have a little bit of discomfort in the flyer's hip than discomfort in the flyer's head.
Wondering, do people need to steer from a different angle to see that? Okay, cool.
Well, let's try. So I'm watching here, and I slid up the hip.
That happens.
And so as I am watching the shoulder here, I make sure that this is nice and long. And if I do the opposite, a bend your elbow, and I extend mine up too much, then I start to tip the flyer off of stack. So I make sure that this arm is nice and long for the flyer. I compromise my alignment, making sure that I can keep my palm over my center. I don't want to be out here. I don't want to be under here. I want to make sure that this is directly under the shoulder, and so that should be over my shoulders. All right, we'll do this in cycle 2 times or 3 times, and then we'll let y'all add it. So it goes 1. Oops. So flyers, if you take your bottom leg, it's going to help direct where the head goes. So if the leg extends this way, the head's going to extend this way. But if the leg extends this way, then the head goes that way, and then that's going to help the rotation. So here, as flyers are coming through, not only are you going to extend out, but you're going to start to turn this leg over the base's head a bit, and then it'll turn into the stack over the base. Makes sense? Bases, flyers. So flyers, you have a huge role to play here. You are not going along for the ride. The things that we have greatest at our disposal are not only the connection points that we have, but as flyers, it is the outermost points of us. It is our heads and our toes that can do a lot to direct the base underneath us where we want them. And so if I want to turn a certain direction as a flyer, I might turn my head, or I might use my foot to direct these things. In this moment here, you can use both, but the legs are going to be really useful. So if you find that the angle is not quite right, keep searching for different angles that rotate right into the base's center. That make sense, flyers?
Yeah. And flyers, you may have seen where I was getting tripped up. It was another moment of compression, of bringing that leg really close. And I really had to slow it down enough so I could focus on externally rotating that bottom leg so I could meet Lux's foot better. Does that make sense? Kind of?
Kind of. All right.
Okay.
Well, prove it. Your turn in 3, 2, 1. And we're going to be watching to make sure that flyers' arms are not compressed here. Flyers and bases also communicate if this gets sore on the wrists. And then, of course, ask questions. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help from a diagnostic or observational standpoint. John, you want to externally rotate the foot when you hit the app. So John, as you come here, meet with an external rotation. Good, you got about halfway there. This time you'll rotate even a little bit more. So John and Tamara, release your left hand before you get back to the hip. Yeah, yeah. And Hannah and Amal, that looked great. Stepping through there was good. That's moving in the right direction. That was good. Let me know if you have questions, but that looked good. Brent, yep. I'm watching. Do you want me to watch? Oh, you want to see it again? Oh, sure, sure, sure. Oops, let me try that again. I came too early. As soon as we make connection here, we release that hand, and that helps out quite a bit as well. Yeah, Laura. Sorry, combined your names. Lo and Gina, I'm watching. All right, cool. Come on down. All right, couple things to modify. One is that when we make the connection with the shin to the foot, bend that knee deeper so that the flyer's not pitched forward. No. Yeah, low. You bend the knee deeper, the one that's supporting. And then once you are there and you start to bring the foot to the hip, or you're not there yet, but the next piece is you'll start to bring the foot to the hip, release your right arm. Yeah. And then that will make it so that the next part of the rotation isn't hindered. Can I watch again? And then Pork Chop, did you have something?
Yeah, we're struggling to get his foot to my hip. We're consistently catching in my thigh, which makes the next rotation to kind of keep going not very doable. And I can't quite figure out how to get his foot to my hip.
Okay. Yeah, we can watch that. Let's see, Lo and Gina, I want you to work on the first piece again. Come on down. And then this time, don't bend the knee as soon. Make the connection first and then bend it. Cool. Pork chop, eyes on you. You too, Chris. Okay, good. Come on down. So for that one, pork chop and Chris, once you have the shin to foot connection and you start to make that rotation, release the right hand. And then you're going to be able to have more access to it. You have enough stability with just one connection point. You have a hand-to-hand on one side and a reverse shin to foot on the other. That's enough stability to get to the next piece. Yeah. Better. Chris, as that happens, you're going to take your left hand and don't keep it over the left shoulder. Bring it across your chest. Shoulders. Yep. Katie and Isaac, that looks great.
Caitlin and Sabrina, anything we can help with?
Larissa and Robbie, that looks great. Diego and Doris, that looks great. Y'all are killing it, looking phenomenal. Nice. And on them all, y'all are doing wonderful.
Yeah. You want us to watch Hannah and Will? Yeah.
Yep. Brent and Nicole, good. Nicole, you can use your legs and your head a little bit more to help that last part of the rotation. But you're looking real good. Yeah, yeah, maybe it's going to be letting go of that forearm, but actually even a step before that, I would say that it's just a little bit too much over Amal's chest and head, just to shift it a little bit more toward Amal, toward your hips a little bit more. And then you're going to release your left arm. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
The other one will not. The other one will feel much less stable.
The one that you feel like you can take away.
All right, give it your last attempts. Caitlin, that's looking good. Good techniques.
All right, Brent and Nicole. Good, okay.
So let's do the opposite, huh? Let's do this in reverse. That's what we've been practicing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right, all right, all right. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Okay, any questions there? Any techniques, anything that you have a question on?
Yeah, so I have a question. So leg that is like straight, and then I'm trying to push this other leg towards my chest, and I don't have that flexibility to bring that legs towards my chest. So what I could do otherwise to...
So there's a couple of things, okay, so there's a few things. Number one is that the shin is a canvas, and so you may find that you have more range on one part versus the other part, because as you start to get maybe too close to the knee, you're too compressed, but if you move toward the ankle, you're gonna have a little bit more room. But even more than that, one thing that I wanna offer, which is actually what we're gonna be doing next, is not worrying about the shin, but actually moving underneath the shin. So in this position here, and this will be fairly universal for what we do, is that if we're making a connection point here and we're feeling too compressed, this entire part of the body and the amount of space that it takes can be eliminated if we just step here instead. So if it feels like this is too much, forget about it. Go to the back of the hamstring and forget about the shin. And you're going to be doing the same thing. The movements are the same. The exercises are the same. It's just going to maybe be a little bit more stable because you're closer to the center of the body. You have one less limb to navigate as you're going through it, but you will also be taking whatever it is, 4 to 6 inches out of that squat for you, and that might help stabilize you. Make sense? Okay, cool. So that's what we're going to be looking at next, is really looking at, we're going to change 2 elements to this same machine. We're going to be, first of all, going backwards through it rather than forwards through it. And then rather than the shin to foot, we're actually going to make a connection to the hamstring. Cool? We do the other side? Yeah. All right. We've been practicing here. Okay. And then we've been going this way. And so here, here, here. Okay. So we're going to be in our inside star. We're going to take and internally rotate the hand for a hand-to-hand grip. And this is crucial. This might be quite intuitive, but this is not the grip that we want. We want this hand-to-hand grip here, an internal rotation for that hand-to-hand grip. I'm going to bend the knee slightly so that we can maintain some stability in these 2 points. And we want to really look at each 2-point connection as its own thing. And so if we can hit all of those, then we can take our hand-to-hand grip normal, step to the hip, and come back to our inside star. Internally rotate the grip, step to the back of the hamstring. We have 3 points, 2 points, even with the connection. There's even more stability, and around. And I want everyone to watch what Emily is doing with this leg as it comes through the hole, over the base's head, and then turns, which really helps rotate the base where we want our bases. Flyers.
So I send my leg straight through neutral, and then I internally rotate. And then look for the other hand to help my chest stay lifted too.
Yep. We will show that again as needed, but we are looking at essentially going through this just in reverse and taking the shin to foot out of the equation and really looking at the hamstring. This is one that I wrote many, many years ago with someone named Mateo, and I kind of let it just kind of rot in my book of things that I wrote, and we just looked at it recently and was like, wow, that's actually kind of fun, and had a lot of fun with it, so we were really excited to bring it forward and share it again. I don't know that I've ever in my life taught it, actually, so we're hoping that you enjoyed as much as we have. So, inside star, hand-to-hand grip, rotates to a mono throne, back to that inside star. Flyers kick the leg back behind them as they're moving through that rotation. Let us know if you need to see it again.
Could we see it 90 degrees? Could you turn
90 degrees? Yeah, we can do it in 90. I'm not sure which 90, so we'll try both. So right from the very first thing, we're going to take that internal rotation, get to the hamstring, squat low. That's getting smoother and smoother. The more that Emily leads this, the easier it is for me. Real nice. That felt cool. Any other questions? All right, give it a shot. Even if you get through part of this and not through the whole thing, refine and get smooth in the parts that you are moving through. Don't worry about the parts that are difficult to reach today.
Larissa and Robbie, it looked like you were there. Do you have a question? No? Just want to do it again?
Landed on the wrong foot, or the wrong angle foot.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Lo and Gina, we will show that again. Was that last angle good? Okay. Start off in our inside star, internally rotate, take our grip, go backwards into the model and reverse throne, and then slowly we will kick the leg back through, internally rotate that leg, which directs the base into the connection points. And just so you know, Lo and Gina and everyone else, if you want us to demo that again and again and again and again, just let us know. Just keep on making the sign, we'll keep doing it. Close that all the way, please. Nestor, bend the knee, bend that left knee a little bit more as Julie sits.
You all right, Rachel?
There you go. Yeah, pork chop.
Yeah, we're on like full on struggle bus over here.
Oh, how cute.
Yeah, can you,
Oh. Yeah, show me your struggle bus. Hand to hand on the left hand.
Larissa and Robbie, we'll show it again in a moment.
Switch that hand to hand grip, the other one. So that left hand to hand grip, not that one, that's your right. Switch that one. There you go. Bend that knee, Chris, push through the arm, pork chop, send it back through. And then Chris, you're gonna rotate your foot the other direction though. That's an external rotation, go internal rotation. And then pork chop, you're gonna wanna be bringing your foot to the other direction. So let's come out of that.
Nice, Katie and Isaac.
We're gonna show the demo again. I think that you can watch it and see the way that the leg rotates. We'll show it again here. Yeah, and basis of position. So we're here, you got that grip just fine. This goes here. We make the second hand-to-hand connection here, and I'm internally rotating my foot, and Emily is shooting the leg the other way, not this way, that way. See that pork chop? Well, now you show me yours. Larissa, Robbie, was that good? Do you need to see again?
Josh and Carmel.
Okay.
Yeah, we can watch you, Josh and Carmel. And then Larissa and Robbie, if you have a question, please feel free to ask.
We just need to do it.
Okay. Josh and Carmel, I'm gonna have you actually turn 180. I'm just lost in the limbs. And then pork chop and Chris, you were going in the correct direction. Chris, don't forget that the leg that you have the hamstring connection to can rotate, and put pork chop into a position where you're going to be directing them into the rotation. Josh and Carmel, eyes are on you whenever you're ready, but rest as much as you need. Okay. And then largely what we're seeing at this point is that exact equation of how much tension is the right amount of tension. We're seeing a lot of tension and then the release of too much tension. And so we want to start to find that middle ground where Instead of all or nothing, we start to find those 50%, those 75%.
Rachel and Ed, I feel like you're really close there. If you have a question, we're here. I know you're communicating with each other.
And then pork chop, Chris, I want to watch y'all again, and I will give you feedback real time. Who are you talking about? Okay.
I think
So far they look good. I don't know which way they go here. It's nice. It's nice. We found some struggle. Yeah. Rachel, you're miming well.
Yeah.
That looks just fine. Chris, don't let that left arm go wide.
Larissa and Robbie. Yeah.
Watching you. Yes. Larissa and Robbie, thank you for showing off. That was really good. Robbie, you can bend your knee a little bit more coming into the reverse thrown part, but that looked great. You got all the pieces, all of them. That was maybe a little too much. You felt how that wobbled. So you can find the amount of bend where the tension is maintained. But you got all the right pieces. Now it's just a matter of fine tuning it. Josh and Carmel, eyes are on you. That looks good. Josh, bend that knee a little bit more and that'll help Carmel sit up more. And then Carmel, actually, you can come to a bit more of a pike there. And now take the left hand in a hand-to-hand grip now. In front, not behind. Get it in front. And so if you, not there, you want to bring it on the other side of the legs. There, yes, 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 there. That's where you grip.
Ed, in that moment, try bending that knee more for Rachel.
Excellent, 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 excellent.
Yeah. So close.
And then Ed, the last piece there will be that when you bring your foot back to the hip, can you hear me, Ed? No. Gotcha. Ed and Rachel, can you hear? Can you hear? So Ed, on that last piece, when you're bringing the foot back to the hip, you're doing it in an external rotation, but do it in an internal rotation. So make the connection with your foot internally rotated. That's external, that's internal. And then don't bring it so soon that you're on the wrong side of Rachel's leg. So we want to make sure that the leg crosses your midline, and then you're going to bring your foot internally rotated, and then you're going to have the next part of the rotation perfectly set up. Give it another 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and we're going to let it rest. Yeah, it's okay. We got a whole another hour after this that people can look at more stuff. Yeah, watching you, Caitlin and Sabrina.
Yeah, that was so good.
Way to show off, kids. Way to show off.
Josh and Carmel.
We're with you.
Actually, maybe just do it again. I was just wondering if I ever ungrip that one hand.
that help?
Cool. All right, last attempts and come on in, come on in, come on in. Diego, you got a question? All right, all right, all right. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Okay, so we're already more than 2 hours in, but on this last one, this was the first one that we started to see a good amount of complication come in. There's a lot of moving pieces. We have internally and externally rotating parts. We also, I was just asked, what do we call this last one? I don't know. What were we calling it? The runaround? Well, because we have the other version that's the getaway, so I don't know, I was just calling it the runaround. But it felt more like that's just kind of like sometimes the way I talk is just kind of the runaround. So I don't know. We don't really have a name. Isaac, Katie, open to suggestions. Let us know if you have one. Josh tends to be really good at naming these things. Let us know if you have one too. But this one had a lot of pieces that were moving independently of each other. And so things do start to get confusing and confused in our bodies physically and in our brains cognitively. And to me, this puzzle solving element of acrobatics is really the juiciest part to me. It's like, I love struggling through these things to start to feel them unlock slowly and slowly and slowly until they do start to get smoother. And that's where the euphoria starts to really come in from myself in this practice. So it was really also phenomenal to watch y'all going through that process and hopefully getting some of that stimulation as well. I know that when I learn something new, I usually take at least 3 days to learn it, and usually I only have about 2 good ones in me the first day. So please be patient with yourselves as you're developing through these things as well. Any questions before we shift? We want to shift a little bit to what I believe is Renee's favorite pose, which is biceps and feet. And so we want to look at biceps and feet a couple of ways. And really what I want to for those of you that have challenges in biceps and feet is to think about it as a shoulder stand rather than biceps and feet. And we want you to think of it as a supported shoulder stand. So we're going to do this with multiple points of contact. Not only are we going to look at what the appropriate grip is for the biceps and feet, but how we can support it by maintaining connection at the flyer's shoulders. So the first thing we want to look at is what is the grip for the flyer on the base's legs. This will be with that wraparound for the thumbs in front of the shins. I'm going to show, I hope it's not too bright. I know that my skin color doesn't show up on camera sometimes, so hopefully it's not too blurry to see. But if we come right to the elbow crease of the low part of the biceps, the flyer is going to, you want to talk it?
Yeah, so I have my fingers pointing down, so my 4 digits, but then my thumb, I wrap around the shins of the base. So it kind of acts as, I don't know, just like another point of support for that movement forward in space to help stabilize.
From there's a few ways that we can do this. Emily's going to show the strongest way first by just simply pressing it, and this is where, or slightly jumping it. And so nice and lifted through the shoulders, pressing down through the arms, squeezing in with the thumbs. All that tension gives the extension for the inversion. Alternatively, we can do a little bend to press. Like I'll bend.
Okay.
So that was with my legs straight. I could also bend a bit, and that makes it a little easier because the flyer doesn't have as much uphill to get through. And then from there, we can extend into the extension from there. And then alternatively, we can support at the shoulders. And so what we want to do is we want to, right from the very beginning, think of this as a shoulder stand where we're holding on to the base's legs. Flyers can jump into a shoulder stand eventually. And I want to make sure that I don't extend my legs too much, or my arms too much rather. I want to make sure that the weight can come into the hands themselves. And then we can start to extend some. And I'm going to maintain connection here. So any one of those variations, we want to at least just have a minute, minute and a half, just calibrate that piece. So those of you that are practicing your biceps and feet, do that. Those of you that want it as a shoulder stand modification, do that. What do you think, Renee? Shoulder stand modification look approachable for you? Shoulder stand's no good? Okay.
You feel free to unmute if you want to.
Oh, you can, I understand. I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll try either. I'll try them both. We'll try them. We'll try them.
Yeah, but keep the weight in the shoulders. Don't feel like the legs have to extend.
Okay.
Do you do shoulder stands?
Yep.
Okay. Think about it as a shoulder stand.
And then you're just not sinking. I sink. You'll see I sink. So instead of holding this, nice, I go, so that's my
part of that's going to be how much the base extends the legs. If the base extends a lot, your elbows are going to go this way. If the base doesn't extend, if the base keeps the legs contracted, you're going to be able to extend your arms more. So that's a negotiation between the two of you.
Yeah, totally. We'll try both. Thank you.
Cool, cool.
Nice, Caitlin and Sabrina. That's a good variation. Nice.
Maybe as far as we get. And then if anyone wants to stand near the rest, we can do that. Just a few attempts, and then we're going to look at what we do with it.
Good, Hannah and Amal. Nice.
Renee, wrap your hands so that you come to the insides of the legs a little more. Yep. Maybe that might be too much, but just a little bit. Yeah, so that the thumbs are at least on the inside. Yeah, Brett, Nicole, what's up?
So watching you guys do it, I'm sorry, what's your name, Flyer? Emily. I'm so sorry. Your shoulders and elbows are like freaking horizontal and beautiful. And so this whole time I gotta be like Emily, like, where are my elbows? They're like way back here. What is something that I can do to work that?
It's a lot of pectoral strength, push-ups. Yeah.
Yeah, handstands, push-ups.
Handstands, push-ups. Like pectorals are these guys right here.
And then if you do want to just feel gratification, you can bring the feet closer to the deltoid biceps connection, and you will be able to get more vertical that way. But down here, it's just a lot of work, a lot of lats too. You gotta be able to extend through those lats really well.
Yeah, I'd say like here, stabilizing, and then I feel the most sore here when I've done a lot of bicep stands.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Nestor and Julie. All right. Give it your last moment and come on in.
Nice, Nicole. Keep pushing, keep pushing. And Brent, you can put your hands up like you were doing a shoulder stand for some reassurance.
But that looked great.
Yeah.
Nicole, you were pretty vertical there.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, horizontal. All right. Moving on. We want to find, we're going to do this one also in a short round. We just want to look at going from that position to a reverse back plank on hands. And again, we're going to look at a couple of techniques to do that. You're going backwards. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to have my hands up, and I'm going to go to a reverse back balance on hands.
So flyers, I'm going to try to slow this down as much as possible by curling and compressing my whole body and allowing the rotation to happen on Lux's feet as they come through that forward roll.
Whoop. Good save. I bring my hands to the upper back and slowly walk down as needed to get to the hips. And then alternatively, we can give a lot more support. So let's do the one where we're supported at the shoulders. Excellent. A little chin tuck. A little more. Excellent. So once the chin is tucked, I can have a really good view of the back, and we can shift a little bit toward a monolimb, and I can slide one hand a little bit down, and then the flyer gets to lean into that. And then I move a little bit further down, and we lean into that, and I move a little bit further down. At some point, the flyer loses grip with the hands, but we still have connection at the forearms, and I can just slowly move down all the way until we do reach the hips, and then the flyer can extend out. We hit our position and down. One last alternative is more of a slide rather than a step. So this would be a hybrid between the flyer doing all the work of lowering and the base doing, one second. So we stay a bit toward the heels. We don't want to put the weight into the fingers too much, so the bases peel the fingers back, and then we just slide until we reach the hips, maintaining connection the whole time without taking the hands away. So if we are doing the slide, we should know that the flyer has a good amount of weight still in their arms so that we're not taking skin with us. If there's too much weight in the base's arms and we slide, it's going to take some of the flyer's skin with us. So we want the flyer to be holding some of their own weight for the slide. If there's a lot of weight in the base's hand, that's where we walk and step it so that we're not chafing the skin of the flyer in that process. And if it feels like flyers have this range of motion without that support, you can do this whole thing floating in the air and then making connection only at the hips. So any of those variations work. Questions? Okay, let's see which one works for you. Give it a minute. 3, 2, 1.
Thanks, Julie and Nestor.
And Julie and Nestor, though this exercise is not just this one thing for y'all, go ahead and go backwards and forwards through that and make it a cycle.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Almost. It's not going to really do it. So Nestor and Julie, if you bring your heels to the biceps rather than the toes to the biceps, you'll roll into the foot.
Your knees, maybe?
Yeah, pork chop.
I just have a question about what is the best way to get out of the back balance and hands in a way that is kind to my base's wrist? I feel a lot of times, like if I'm just like trying to exit, like stand up from that balance, that I pour into his wrist a lot.
Is that too much for you, Chris?
It's okay. It's not great. I can bend my arms, and that I think helps.
Yeah, I mean, so your alternatives are that you can bring it down this way, you can turn it to bring it down if one of your wrists you're trying to protect, or you can bring this back to your feet in a number of ways. So once you're on, you're balanced in your hands, you can, I mean, let's see, there's like endless ways to really execute that, but we can go, you want to keep doing this, or you want to conserve your energy and just go reverse back plank on hands? Okay. So once I'm here, I could also just bring feet to armpits and bring it down this way. But just transferring the weight back to the legs at some point. I could also just rest it on my shins and bring it down that way. You can, crumble into a nice little ball on each other. Anything you need to protect yourself.
I see some nice variations flyers where you're using your hands on the bottom of the base's feet for some more stability. I like that.
Very nice, Larissa and Robbie. Wow, Renee. Tuck your chin, Renee. More. Look up at the ceiling.
Nice, Julie and Esther. Now try the movement back up into a bicep stand, tucking through and coming back through the center of the legs rather than back bending over.
All right, we'll give it our last moments. Yeah, they're going the other direction. Yeah.
Go the other way.
So Julie, if you bring your arms out to a cross. Julie and Nestor, watch for a moment. And then everyone can start to bring themselves back in. So I bring my heels to the insides of the biceps here. And then
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Say hello to those abs.
All right, come on in, come on in, come on in. Heels, not toes. Even more heels, you're only at the center of the foot. And then Julie, yeah, you rotate that direction.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, excellent, excellent, excellent. Come on in. So we are 2.5 hours in, and there's a few things that are going to go on now. The first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to do a little wrap up, because in the video version of this, I'm not going to have the jam part of it as part of the video. So I'm going to say a little thank you and all, and then we're going to go back into our regular program. And for those people that are watching this video, you should also know that we may be showing a few demos after this that we'll make sure to put into the video. But I want to thank everyone for participating in this. That was a good amount of work over a short amount of time, looking at a lot of different techniques. Again, the focus of this month really was to look at how much tension is too much and how much tension is not enough, and to start to find in every different position how much is the appropriate amount of tension for the two of us to work together to maintain stability for fluidity in transition. That is a never-ending process, something that changes throughout our practice each day, and something that certainly grows with us over a longer period of time, and something that as we grow as humans, we're constantly recalibrating with each other. And so we really are grateful for everyone participating in that, in those exercises, in that effort. Really beautiful to watch everyone here, approaching everyone really kindly, looking at their partners, and everyone, the body language today was really open and really inviting, and that was really beautiful to watch. Attempts were celebrated, and nobody saw that, Diego. Nobody saw that. Don't worry. And everyone really was working toward not toward ourselves, but toward our partner's greatest success. And so that is really what showcases, I think, best in this practice. And we're grateful to have you all demonstrate it so well. So thank you for that. Thank you all for supporting this project. And we do hope that you continue to show up each month for whatever the new offerings are going to be. And we're excited to keep doing this each month, and coming up with new fun exercises that hopefully will give you some things to practice each month until the next one. In the meantime, please, of course, feel invited to reach out to us if there's any questions you have on any of this material, or if you're looking for something that will help prepare you for the next one. We will always be happy to give you some of those exercises. Some of you have actually taken us up on that, and we're really happy to. We've made videos for people, and we've also just been able to diagnose videos that you've sent us. So please keep that up. We're happy to continue to participate in your practice even between these sessions. So thank you all. So here we are back in this position here. Let's go backwards for a moment into this. And so when this leg comes through, watch how it really drives this way. And then that brings my foot more, even though it's more of an internal, it's pretty neutral. I don't have to chase too much for it. And that makes it easy for us to get to this position again. Right now, y'all are a bit more like here. And so we want to get it so that I bend the knee, which puts the weight in the leg so that I can push the arm more. So if it starts to feel too heavy here in the arms, if you lift your legs even a little bit more, it'll start to feel like a handstand. Yeah. And so if it starts to feel too much like there's too much weight in the arms, Carmel, you can bring your legs down a bit. I'm going to bring my leg down a bit, and then I can push up through the arm and transfer the weight that way. Once you're there, you can go right back into it. So basically, you are at the last piece of this, and you just need to work out some of the mechanics, but you're right there.
So towards abdomen, right? Okay. Oh. Yeah, okay, there's something else going on that we're not doing right on that last kick through.
So
right.
So, okay, so here's what's going on.
Yeah,
I'm
right
asking you to internally rotate your leg, but it's actually this leg here that's doing a lot of the internal rotation. So I'm internally rotating that leg, which lets this leg be more neutral.
Yeah.
So I'm feeding this leg so it doesn't have to work as hard to get there.
I think Emily is
doing something that
doing some sort of rotation that Carmel's not.
A lot of rotation. Emily is driving this.
Back.
Do you know what you're doing?
I think right here, I'm taking my torso and I'm aiming it toward Lux's chest. Help with that rotation as well.
And then we have a landmark in this room, the way we're set up, that, you know, I can say, I have a window on this wall, and I can say, as you're bringing your leg through, point that leg at the window, or as Emily was saying, point the torso toward what is actually my kitchen. And you can also utilize landmarks in your room to kind of do the same thing. As the leg comes back and through, then where is it going? And then am I allowing for it by letting this leg internally rotate to exaggerate it? Because if not, Josh, if I resist that at all, Emily's not going anywhere. So
Yeah, I
Emily
think,
is driving and I am certainly following.
yeah. Yeah, I think Carmel was kicking the leg back and we were making the connection right there. But she needs to kick the leg back, then start circling it around and then make the connection. And that's what we
Yeah.
want.
And you following through with your internal rotation to make sure that you're getting the most out of that effort.
Yeah, Carmel, I'm like that leg that I'm feeding through. I'm really like, I'm like almost doing this internal rotation, like a lot. Because that's gonna chain reaction starting in the pelvis up to the chest.
Oh, look at this, beautiful. Okay, cool. Let's look at our foot to hand.
Mhm.
All right. So we're gonna look at one pose, and then we're gonna look at transitioning from that pose to a foot to hand. The pose that we're looking at. Put your hand here. The pose that we're looking at is gonna be a foot to hand after a chop. The safety fifth. Safety sixth.
I learned how to count with my thumb as 1, 2, 3.
Oh, you're one of those people.
One of those people.
One of those people. All right. Now the chalk is dry. We take a foot to hand on the one, and I'm going to take a connection right around the patellar tendon underneath the kneecap. And what I'm going to do is, and maybe even connect it to the shin because I don't want to pull on connective tissue, but I'm going to have my fingers available to peel back. Flyer is going to lean into both connection points, lean into the shin and stand into the foot. Turn this just a little bit. From there, the flyer is going to reach their foot across their own knee and steal my hand away from that knee for a foot to hand. We'll show that again. We make a foot to hand connection. We make a hand to knee connection. And I rotate this so that it comes over my shoulder. If it's oriented too close to my hips, this arm is not going to be strong enough to hold. So I rotate it over the shoulder, then the flyer follows that direction, reinforcing the structure. Flyer crosses their own leg and really comes across. Let's try that again, yeah. I want to make sure that as the flyer brings their leg across, we don't start to get fingers and toes intermixed. That's a great way to break a finger or a toe. So flyers, the more that we can cross our legs and really give the blade edge of the foot, I'm going to open up my fingers and try to access the knuckle edge, and that's how we're going to find our way into our foot to hand.
Yeah, flyers, this is tricky. Something that helps me is I try to find my own thigh and like sickle my foot and then drag my foot down for reference.
Yeah, and that's much better than searching for the base's hand. Is search for your own thigh, and the more that you can even reach to the outside of the thigh, the better it's going to be. You probably won't reach that far, but just from a cognitive standpoint. And we can find our way into a foot to hand. Cool. Okay. So we're going to look at a transition here. It moves from that supported foot to hand and knee to foot into a croc, or sorry, not into a croc, but into a biceps and feet. Hold on a second, I just need to figure out which rotation this is going. We're going this way. Okay, I think this will be good then. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. It feels so good to feel that unwind. So we use a little bit of hand to foot support just to mount in. We find this balance here. flyer crosses their legs, which just tends to find a bit of an easier time into this next piece here. I bring my foot up and I internally rotate it, and the flyer externally rotates their arm to connect to it. Second foot comes up and then curls into the rotation inversion. So for flyers, it's this funky position because we're used to coming into those inversions like this, but we're actually, for this one, in order to get the right grip, you externally rotate the arm and come over across. You want to see it one more time? And can we balance this before you cross your legs?
Yeah.
I internally rotate my foot, external rotation of the flyer's arms. I extend up through the arms to help the legs as the flyer does the rest of the press. Was that a good angle? Okay. Tomorrow you want to see it at a bit of a rotation? Yeah. Sure. Would you like to look at my booty? Would that be a good one? I don't know. You're like, yeah, not normally, but maybe for this. We'll go maybe a bit more like this angle. See if that helps. Yeah, starting from biceps works. And then we'll see how much of it I can remember. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then turn toward that armpit just a bit. I don't know, something came in my eye, but yeah, that was about it. Here, let's do it from this angle. Come through. We just pause here. I take a foot off and bring it to the armpit, and then the second foot to the sacrum so that the flyer's a bit twisted in this position. And then that gives the ability to start to turn and still have support at the armpit as we're lifting off into this position. And then we already have that piece.
Cool.